see our notes.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're the Little Out Construction Company. I'm Ian. This is Courtney, Jasmine, Melanie, and Davica. Our faculty advisors are Drew Davidson and Shirley Saldamarco. Our client is John Baelish, the Director of ETC Outreach, Extension, and Engagement, and we are co-designing with the Pittsburgh Boys and Girls Club of Western Pennsylvania. And we are operating under a grant from the Grable Foundation. Our project goal is to design an physical interactive platform that teaches collaborative storytelling to middle school students and inform them and expose them to the Entertainment Technology Center and the entertainment technology industry as a whole. So before we decide on how we were going to do that, we first had to ask ourselves, what exactly do we do here at the ETC? And after much discussion amongst ourselves, with our peers, and with the faculty, we came to the conclusion that regardless of what anyone does here, the through line is that everyone tells interactive stories using collaboration and unique technology. Whether it's games, location-based entertainment, or anything in between, this is the common through line that runs through everything. To that, when we were figuring out how exactly we wanted to teach this, we landed on the decision that we would teach this creative process of creative storytelling through using an animatronic kit. More specifically, the Bot Tango Maxwell kit as a starting base. Bot Tango is an open source industry standard animatronic programming software, and the Maxwell kit drastically lowers the skill setting that we need to do in order to make modifications and personalize it. Now, of course, this begs the question, why are we using an animatronic in the first place as opposed to something like a digital character? There are two main reasons for this. The first is that middle school students will already have had like a ton of exposure to digital characters, whether it's through online entertainment or video games. And so that's not as novel as seeing a physical thing in front of you that you can send commands to articulate in real time, and that would evoke stronger interest. The second is that the ETC has had a history of robotics programs, whether it's the tomfoolery or, of course, quasi-animatronics of the past, even more recent things like the Unitree G1 robot. Our metrics of success for this project are client requirements. We are designing a platform that is joyful, meaningful, socially engaging, cooperative, interactive. Our documentation. One of the main things about this project is that it is intended to be a 3-semester project. So part of our task is to create robust documentation that documents our hardware, our software, and our playtesting feedback so that way the next team can hit the ground running. Next up is interactivity. Every part of our experience must mesh well together, and everyone needs to be constantly collaborating. Finally, proof of concept. By the end of the semester, we want to have a physical proof of concept constructed that we can playtest at a Boys and Girls Club. I'm not going to hand it over to Melanie to talk about our experience design.
Thank you, Ian. So for our experience design, I want to remind everyone that we are making a platform, and this is just a vertical slice of our experience. So we fully expect this to evolve over time, or multiple programming to be evolved or performed on it. So when a guest first walks into the space, they will see a table full of materials, 4 podiums with electronic equipment, and a stage that has a lighting rig, an animatronic, and a screen mounted behind it. They would be greeted by the facilitator, and they would tell them that they are getting a little slice of what the ETC is like. The phase 1 would be the story station. Here they would find tiles with whiteboard markers, and some of the tiles would have words on them to get them started. On a bigger board would be the Pixar prompt, which would create kind of like the structure they build off of. So each sentence in the Pixar prompt would be a scene, and they would add their own verbs, words, nouns, adjectives, things like that to tell a story. After that, they would have to go to the facilitator and present their idea. This covers 2 things. One is so that they can hear the entire story in its complete form, and 2, it's to mimic the pitching and presentation process at the ETC. Once approved, they move on to either the art station or the programming station. At these stations, they would be greeted by an ETC student video relating to that field to tell them what they're doing today and how they got interested in the entertainment technology field. At this point, the group is also split into 2 different groups. So at the art station, we would ask our guests to either hand draw their own background, or if they're not comfortable, they can use pre-made coloring book-like assets to fill in the background, adding in different aspects that they want. They can constantly test it behind the animatronic, make any changes that they want to see, and that kind of mimics the iteration process we do here. At the programming station, they would have a touch screen where they would drag and drop block code to make the animatronic move in real time. From there, they would be able to set the timing, the movements to really tell their story. After that is completed, they would move on to phase 3, which the artists would move to the lighting station and the programmers would move to the sound station. At the lighting station, they would be allowed to play with 3 different RGB lights per scene and be able to see how the colors interact with each other as well as with the animatronic. At the sound station, the programmers would then see their code that they had just done and add in audio clips that they can mess around with. We have some pre-made assets like sound effects and music that they can add, or they can record their own, like an actual sound designer. After all is completed, the show is performed. From there, the show is also recorded and sent to the ETC outreach staff. And from there, they would be sent to a screen here, located in the building, and they would organize a visit from the guests at the Boys and Girls Club to come and see everything that we do here. And they'd have a little taste, and they can see them in this space. So I'm gonna pass it off to Jasmine next, who's gonna talk about our scope and some site visits.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Melanie. So as mentioned earlier, we are the first semester of a 3-semester project, so it was very important for us to determine what is in scope for us and what is out of scope and what will be achieved by future teams and future semesters. So what is in scope for us is a working prototype that we will bring to the Boys and Girls Club at the end of the semester. This working prototype will include interfaces that we have designed and software that we have implemented in order for this prototype to function. And this working prototype will expose middle schoolers to what we do here at the ETC, not give them mastery over our skills here. What is out of scope for us and what future teams will be responsible for is the final install at the Boys and Girls Club. This final install will have to be designed for robustness in order to sustain dozens of students interacting with it every single day. And this team would have to be responsible for facilitator guides and educational programming. Again, we are just creating this platform, not the lesson, or not the lessons or the learning goals. That would be a future team. So this first half of the semester, we got to do some really fun site visits, the first of which is to a local company called CodeJoy. So at CodeJoy, they teach robotics to classrooms of kids all throughout the world, and they teach them about robotics by doing these live streams where kids can do block code and send it in and see how their code impacts robotics in real time. From the site visit, we learned a lot about how we can make robotics approachable and friendly and kind of lower the bar of entry. Our second visit was to Junior Achievement BizTown. BizTown was the inspiration for this entire project. At BizTown, kids get to try out adult jobs for a day. Every storefront is sponsored by a real-life company, for example, FedEx or UPMC, and at each of these storefronts, kids have interactions and tasks they must complete in order for their business to run. And from this visit, we learned a lot about how we can design interactions that resonate with kids and how to design interactions that force kids to collaborate with each other. And our final site visit was to the Boys and Girls Club. This specific clubhouse is where our final playtest will be happening at the end of the semester. We got to take a look at some potential spaces we can host our playtest at, and all these spaces are large, very spacious, and will have plenty of room for us to move in our set and run our playtest. Now I'm gonna pass it to Devika, who will speak more about our playtesting.
Thank you, Jasmine. We conducted multiple playtests, both within the building with ETCers and at Hunt Library during the playtest nights there with students from main campus. We will be conducting further playtests with our age demographic over the following week. For our paper prototyping phase, we had a story station that's very similar to our final install, where guests added little parts of speech to the Pixar story prompt or wrote their own. And this helped us realize the kind of stories they wanted to tell and the verbs they wanted to use. We had paper prototypes of all our digital interfaces. So here's our block coding programming station. For art, we had both a Samsung tablet and traditional drawing paper as interfaces in this phase. For lighting, we had a simple show control system and RGB light setup. And for sound, we initially used Google Slides deck and later on a MIDI keyboard. Conducting these playtests helped us identify interesting user behavior, which in turn led to a lot of iterations in our UI UX design. So for instance, we wanted the programmers and the artists to communicate better with each other. And we realized that that happens when they're working on the same scene at the same time. So we added a flow where the programmer selects the scene for both stations to work on, and they work together and move to the next scene together. In case either station finishes before the other, they get to watch more clips of ETC students talking about their experience while they wait for the other station to catch up. In our art station, we realized that guests who didn't have an art background felt reluctant to draw from scratch. So we gave them a separate user flow where they can explore a pre-made asset library. We also added a toggle button for them to cast to the stage behind the animatronic when they're ready, because kids wouldn't feel comfortable showing their entire process to the class and would prefer to show the completed artwork. And that helped us include the ETC's methodology of iteration and playtesting in our process. For our lighting station too, we saw that guests weren't comfortable mixing RGB lights and intuitively thinking of how that light is going to look different on different colors. So we gave them a panel to show what the lights they're mixing would look like, and we also decided to add tips that would pop up ever so often, guiding them through the process, since this would be a more steep learning curve for a middle schooler. As for our sound station, we had different sections for ambient sound, dialogue, background music, just to teach kids how to layer and mix sound and to show them the full potential of the sound library that they have. The sound station will include physical buttons, so that's something we'd be iterating on more after Halves. I'm going to pass it on to Courtney to talk about our set iterations and tech.
Thanks, Devika. So our site visits and our playtests also helped us decide how we want to design the actual set itself. In our original design, the platform was going to be one singular platform with all of the interactive stations actually built into the stage where the animatronic would stand. However, this would have been too big for us to transport from the ETC to the Boys and Girls Club, and it was also more difficult for guests to collaborate with each other when the animatronic was in the center like this. We also received some concerns from faculty early on about the ability of guests to tell an engaging story with only one character. So, for our second iteration, we separated out the interactive stations and the stage. We also added a second detachable component to the stage where a live performer could act as that secondary character. However, we found that through playtesting, most guests who wanted more than one character would simply draw them in during the art station. And while many people liked the idea of watching an animatronic interact with a character, most people weren't comfortable being that character themselves. So, for our final iteration, we have left the stage as one singular piece in the center, and all of the interactive stations will be separate podiums that can be easily rearranged as needed. Inspired by our visit to CodeJoy, we are designing the set to look like you are backstage of a real production set. So for an overview of our tech, we are keeping the story station as an analog experience using physical blocks on a magnetic board to put the story together. And for our software, we are building a control system in Unity, which will allow the guests to interface with the animatronic, the digital backdrop, the sounds, and the lights from their touchscreen stations. Because we are not designing the educational programming, we want to ensure that our software is flexible. So we will also have a control station where the facilitator can adjust and customize settings such as the number of story scenes available in order to fit their programming needs. So currently we are focused on developing the phase 2 stations, which are the coding and the art stations. So we have implemented a method for the programmers to select which scene they are working on and to use drag and drop block code to send commands to the animatronic. For the art station, we have implemented the freehand drawing method, and we are currently working on adding some pre-made assets which the guests can use in response to the feedback that we got from our playtesters. So this is what our outlook looks like for the rest of the semester. By week 7, so the end of this week, we will have placed our final order for the materials that we need to build our set, and we will also have completed the phase 2 stations. By the end of week 9, we will have built the set and augmented the animatronic. By week 10, we will have all of our stations completed, and by week 14, we will have our final playtest at the Boys and Girls Club. Throughout the semester, we will also be continuously playtesting here at the ETC with our target demographic. So thank you all for listening to our presentation. We are now ready for questions.
I think something I would like to see you think through is the final loop of experiencing what you have. When you think about it, you're just thinking of the installation, the final product being a video, and not much thought of like, well, what does that mean to have that product? You know, I take, for example, you take that same thing and you put it on a television that makes it look like you're scrolling for your favorite show, and then poof, there's your episode, right? It's the context to make them believe I can do this. You see the same impact when you're teaching kids game design, and all of a sudden it comes off the computer and it's on a tablet, or it's off the computer on a mock phone. All of a sudden there's a click that's like, this is real, or this is obtainable. So since you're focusing on production and show, and the end product is a video, you should really think about how do the kids experience that video at the end. If it's simple, just like clicking on a computer, maybe it doesn't have the same impact as putting it in a fake, a make-believe context of it on a real streaming platform or something to give them that kind of spark of, I see the connection between this content that I consume and this process of making it.
Great presentation. I'm wondering if you've thought a little bit about collaboration mitigation strategies within stations, because I think that's always a really hard problem with children, which is that if multiple of them are using the programming station, how exactly would they collaborate in station? Or is the idea of just having one student per station? What are your thoughts?
So our ideal throughput is 4 to 6 kids at a time. So when they split up, it would be 2 or 3 per station. During playtests, we saw that we observed different things. Some of them collaborate to make the block code work together. Some of them take initiative and take a lead role. We will know how that's going to work with middle schoolers soon this week. But the idea is to test with different different groups of people like that. We have bought multi-touch screens so that, because ideally we want them to work together.
And if they're fighting, it's up to the facilitator to stop them from fighting.
Hey, so I'm both excited and scared by this idea that it's a 3-semester project. And so I'm wondering how you're keeping in mind, so you talked a little bit about technically sort of how you're setting it up to pass it off to the next team. In terms of the next teams also bringing like creative, interesting energy to this, like where are the places left in the project where, so they're not just like implementing your vision, does that make sense, where they can bring their own creativity and energy to what's going to happen next?
Yeah, that's something that we've been thinking about a lot. This was a concern that was raised a lot during our quarters. And so as we've been developing, we've thought of a lot of different ideas about, oh, what if this was done something similar with the Lego robotics, or if this was done with incorporating like a digital character. So I think that having this as a base and then the actual programming being something that is decided how they want to creatively move things through, what else they want to add to augment this experience and make it better. I think that there's a lot of room for that, and we've kind of identified those areas as we've been developing.
Yeah. Part of our documentation will also be just like providing like a couple of like ideas that they can carry the project forward at the end. So if they want to use those ideas as a launching point, they can certainly do that, but if they want to take it in a different direction using the platform, they can also do that.
Boy.
Where's the other one?
Are we ready? Perfect. Hey everyone, welcome to our Halves presentation. We're Team 270 Degrees Fun. This is a team and our roles. Mike and Drew are our instructors. Matthew Callison from South Fayette School District is our client. And now to start. Our client asked us to design an experience for their cavern, and the goal is to have the experience be cooperative, engaging, designed with accessibility in mind, playable by a wide age range, and has a positive impact on the students. Outside of that, we have total creative freedom, which is good for our own learning goals. So our deliverable is a 5-minute massive multiplayer cooperative racing game designed specifically for the cavern that immerses the players into the fan experience of Formula One. Replicating the fan experience of attending a racing track and that excitement of cheering for your favorite team is something that we believe can only be done in the cavern thanks to its immersive capabilities. Now, you may be asking if the players are the audience, but the audience doesn't play or doesn't drive, doesn't race, then what are they doing? Let's talk about game design. Our goal is to find a balance between having player agency and still feeling like you're part of the audience and the game is basically playing by itself. This is an interaction that was tested during quarters, which felt more like car slot racing. We had agency, of course, but no challenge and definitely not the audience feel that we were aiming for. This is the first iteration. We had agency and we had that audience feel, but not enough challenge. How it works is player cheer as the audience for their favorite driver, for their favorite team, and that inspires the driver. And what I mean inspire is the driver improves on its own. It overtakes other cars, optimizes the racing line, and accelerates when needed. There is some challenge involved, as inspiring the driver in specific points of the map, and also depending on where the cars are, may cause it to crash or drift unintentionally. This is all possible thanks to the waypoint system and physics simulation that will be talked about later. During playtesting, players were excited as the audience, to play as the audience, but they wanted more, like waving flags, crowd chants, and the iconic wave you see at stadiums. So for future iterations, it's a choice how players cheer, but working as a team will have more impact on the driver, highlighting the cooperative aspect of this game. Because the game has to be smaller and shorter than a racing track, than a real race, we can design a smaller track that fits the need and the immersive capabilities of the cavern curved screen and surround sound. And this is the layout we're going for. And to best use the stereoscopic vision, we place the speeding areas going away and towards the players in the cavern. Now, during quarters playtest, we encountered some visibility issues because the track was flat. So we took inspiration from real F1 tracks, like bank curves, turns, and elevation changes to fix these visibility issues. And here are the spots where the player can control the audience. And again, you may be asking yourself, so the players are in the track, in the cavern, as part of the audience, but they're also controlling other members of the audience in the rest, like, along the track. To better explain this, one of the missions in Driver San Francisco has the player camera inside a car, but the player is actually controlling the car, the orange car in the front. So the car where the camera is driving by itself. Well, this is, there's no defined terminology for this. Some people call it second-person POV or second-person storytelling. Now, I'm going to pass it to Yuhoi to talk more about tech.
So let's now talk about how our tech team helped to achieve our design goal. So first, why we are using the smartphone as a controller is for its simplicity and accessibility. Everyone has a smartphone. So this is a pic during our playtest session. We literally just invite other people walking across the cavern to join, and they can just log into the local host server and play this game, which is our desired effect. And also, we have a very simple layout for the interface, so players do not have to watch their smartphone to control their input, and they can instead focusing on the cavern visual. And as mentioned by Jose, we have a waypoint system. The waypoint system is a system I developed to let the cars to go along the tracks with player influence speed. And the benefit of this is helps our pipeline. So by using this system, the designers can adjust the tracks, the speed by themselves. So in the future, if we want to do more tracks, if we want to make slight adjustment based on the playtest effect, it's very simple, and it's helped us to do more iterations. And also, the great physics simulation, and as you can see from the GIF, we can have the overtakes, we have the drifting, we can also it's not shown, but we can simulate crashes. And we have to address, we are the first big ETC project to use Spanlux, which is the Kevin toolkit developed last semester. During our development, we also added new features to Spanlux. First, it's the post-processing, which is a big part to facilitate the fantastic cavern visual. And second, as mentioned before, we are using a local host multiplayer system, which is holding a server in the cavern. So later on, if players want to use our setup to use the phone controller, it will be easier for them to do the iterations. And we've talked about this with the Spanlux development team, and they are very happy to see the Spanlux to become a more and more powerful toolkit for future ETC usage. And now let's welcome Anne to explain the character art for our project.
Thank you, Yu-Huai. Our design is inspired by real F1 teams. Real F1 teams have strong, recognizable identities, which provides ready-made inspiration. Basing characters on them can create unique and believable designs grounded in reality. Starting with the iconic Ferrari, a legendary and historic Italian teams known for having the most passionate fan base. There's a saying in Italy, if you see a huge crowd, it's either for the Pope or for Ferrari. That fan passion combined with the iconic Ferrari red gave birth the idea of flame. The visual parallel with a Roman helmet and a modern racing helmet, especially with the plume mirroring the fire, became the key motif of our concept, just like this. Our second team takes inspiration from the Red Bull, the youngest and the most dynamic force on the grid. With its bold commercial identity and striking red, yellow, and blue palette, Red Bull stands out as a symbol of modern F1 energy. Max Verstappen, the most dominant driver in recent years, embodies an aggressive driving style and now representing Red Bull's fierce spirit. To express this fusion of pop commercial flair and raw aggression, we use Red Bull's signature colors along with sharp angular forms. Elements like bull horns, hooves, and a splash-shaped halo reinterpret the team's explosive character in a bold visual language. Our third team is inspired by Mercedes. Unlike the more extroverted first two teams, Mercedes represents German efficiency, precision, cutting-edge technology. The W10 engine and reshaped the F1 landscape and marked the beginning of a dominant Mercedes era. Mercedes symbolized a more quiet, restrained kind of power. To reflect that, we focus on the sleek curves drawn directly from the car's design, leaning into a more futuristic style. The shape of the car's front wing is reimagined as the upper part of the cape. The wing motif also comes from George Russell, Mercedes' lead driver, inspired by his signature victory pose with both arms raised like wings. Now hand it to Sally to talk about environment.
Thank you, and now let's take a look at the environmental art. So here are two concept textures for the car models. The first one references Ferrari team, which use red as the main color palette, and the another one is for Red Bull, which use blue as the main theme. And we're going to refine these two textures and also make our third one based on N's concept art and our art direction. And in the environment, F1 tracks feature these sponsor logos, so we plan to add the logos at the side of our tracks as well, which we're thinking of could be the team logos from other ETC projects. And our environment also include audience seat, and here's a model for it. We're going to texture it based on our art style. And to maintain a unified and stylized look, we referenced F1 for the pit stop, utilizing the same color palette and also incorporating our own design logos for each team. And now Dennis will talk about technical art and visual effects.
Thanks, Sally. So for the technical art part, the art team explored the possibilities of VFX in the cavern, and we discovered that the Splunk SDK does not support post-processing. This will cause the HDR color and material emission effect to degrade. Post-processing is significant for our project because we needed to make our effect vivid and authentic. We then looked into the rendering pipeline of the Splunk SDK. The pipeline mainly consists of 2 steps. First, render the scene into a cube map from the camera, and then sample the cube map into the long strip render image for cavern stream projection. Based on their implementation, our solution is changing the cube map data format from 8-bit unsigned int to 16-bit float, which is a suitable data format for high luminance color. Next, change the cube map sampling stage to before post-processing. Now the post-processing runs on the long strip render image. Finally, enable post-processing in the render graph camera. Here's our result. We can see that the high luminance color works well in the cavern. However, note that there are still limitations such as not supporting depth-based effects because the cube map does not have the depth buffer, and it also doubles the GPU memory cost. Now I will pass to Olivia to talk more about VFX.
Thank you, Dennis. For the VFX that directly influence the gameplay, the first one we have is car trails. This effect appears when players cheer at the right timing, and the trail length also changes based on the character's speed, so it works as a clear indication of speed as well. For the visual style, I kept it true to the character's concept art. Next, we have sparks, which are inspired by actual F1 cars. In real races, sparks fly when the car speeds up and scrapes against the track. We brought that idea into our game, and here it is triggered when the car's speed goes beyond a certain level. Through playtesting, we learned how important VFX are for this project. Playtesters wanted more visual effects as gameplay feedback, and since this is a cheering game that overlooks the stadium, they also suggested to add more things happening in the background to make the experience feel more immersive. So for now, we included fireworks and a flame jet, which would help the world feel more alive and dynamic. For the future VFX, many of the ideas actually came from playtester feedback. We plan to create custom trail effects for all the cars as well as brake marks and smoke. We will also work on crash effects and audience reactions, which will make the gameplay feel even more exciting and immersive. And moving forward, we'll continue to conduct more playtests to gather feedback and actively reflect it in our design. I'll hand it back to Jose.
So now that we have defined our core mechanic, art direction, and programming tasks, the plan is to have more frequent playtesting inside this building and also move our playtest to South Fayette. Thanks, Steve. To recap, our deliverable is a massive multiplayer racing game that is highly immersive thanks to environment designed for stereo vision and surround sound, new post-processing feature for the cavern, self-driving cars with physics simulation. The game is accessible thanks to phones as controllers and versatile verbs, and characters and teams are designed to evoke a sense of belonging. Thank you, and we're now open for questions.
Yeah, I'm just looking to clarify. It's a little unclear to me where you are in the prototyping phase. What have you built? What have you learned from play testing and all of that? If you could talk about that a little more, that'd be great.
So we recognize that original challenge was get the audience feel of the game. I think we nailed that on our first iteration, not in quarters. Now we're at the stage that we need to give players more choices, more options. They were excited to I can go back to the slide. One second. Right here. This is what we play tested on our first iteration 2 weeks ago. But people wanted more. So we're giving them more. We nailed the first audience field, just more options, more choices, more player-to-player communication and interaction. That's where we are at.
I'm curious, yeah, you talked about this, but you didn't talk about this effect specifically in terms of the VFX and the cooperation aspect. I guess, what are your thoughts on that for the future development?
So, like during our playtest, it's like our controlling is basically clicking the button to cheer, and like some people like pointing out is like maybe to simulate like some movements like only happens in stadium, like waving a flag or like doing the human wave. Like we can do like we have the audience seat. If the many players, if they hit a combo or something, like to a very large extent, we can have like a human wave like happening in the on the audience seat. Like basically, like if they do like only a small cheering, it's like only very slight VFX feedback. But like by doing kind of a combo or something like, which is more complexity to facilitate like kind of a more fantastic VFX, like a human waving or like firework or something. Also maybe also audio feedback like yelling, cheering, like more crowd sound.
Thanks. Good use of using real auto companies to help you with the visual design of logos and colors and all that. I might have missed it in the presentation, but does that also carry over into the design of what each of the teams can do? How do the teams feel different in other ways that are not just cosmetic?
No, it's mainly cosmetic. Whatever happens in the game, we want it to be emergent storytelling. So if red team for 3 gameplay sessions is being too aggressive, then okay, they are the aggressive team. They're maybe not because it's coincidence. That's what we're aiming for, emergent storytelling. Any other question?
Okay, good afternoon. We are Team Essence, and this is our Halves presentation. We're doing a VR hiking game, and first of all, we're going to play a short demo video. And these are our team members. This is William, Xiaofan, me, Zhanqi, Joy, and Jialan. And our instructors are Jonathan and Ricardo. As a one-sentence summary, this is a single-player VR hiking experience that uses full-body movement to turn hiking into a meditative journey. These are the key directions that shape our projects. We're developing in VR using Unreal Engine 5 for its strong tools in lighting and materials. This helps us craft a peaceful world. On the tech side, we're exploring foot tracking, allowing players to move naturally and deepen their sense of presence. Our art direction is a stylized mid-poly, designed to look calm and clean rather than realistic. The core experience remains meditative, inviting players to slow down, explore, and feel grounded in the environment. Finally, our target audience is 12 and plus, players who can appreciate slower and reflective experience.
Thank you, Zhanqi. And our project builds on 3 pillars. First, embodied movement. The core action is to have first-person hiking experience that the player can really feel present in the natural movement. By having the guests interacting with their own body, rather just looking at it, we create a sense of being inside the world. Secondly, immersive environment. We want to create a calm landscape that guide the experience and journey to set the mood. These environments aren't just a backup, aren't just something behind a player. They shape the player's journey. And third, mindful interaction, just a simple, subtle way to interact with the surroundings. We are not asking the player to constantly pick up on anything, but just a small touch that deepens the present without breaking the flow. Together, these 3 pillars create an experience is grounded, immersive, and mindful. And our core experience includes 4 stages. Entry, where the players start to feel a sense of where they are at and enters the VR environments. Second, the exploration. This is where players start to discover and start to walk around in a landmark and landscape. And they also start to have the moment of interacting with different elements. Third, the dynamic moments. This is where the highlight of the journey. This sparks the emotion and also keep the player motivated to move forward. Lastly, the final achievement. This is where the player reaches the top of the mountain and give them a most satisfying viewpoint and milestone. Here's a simplified version of our map, which includes a start, couple nice view, dynamic moments, and couple hidden spot, and an end. We wanted to include hidden spot because we wanted to make the journey more complex and interesting. Please mind that the way that we wanted to make this meditative is to have the experience start from a more man-made world, more modern world, and started to walk into nature. We have the start as a camping site, and as our player walks into the woods, into the our mountain, there will be less and less man-made stuff, and there's also more and more white noises from the nature. And we also have the 2 interest curve, with and without the hidden spot, just in case that our player doesn't find any hidden spot. We want to ensure the emotion is almost the same. And so far, we have finished the first half of our map. We want to focus on the main track, which is the green highlighted part first, before adding those hidden spots. And the highlighted part is where we have already built. This is a top-down view of what our actual map looks like. We have created a start, a nice view, and a dynamic moment. And this is an in-game screenshot of the environment you have created so far. We created those 3 moments separately and then connect them with path, so that we ensure those path is more neutral and more subtle on the visual, so they won't be too distracting, as we want those key areas to be the guidance and attraction for our guests to move forward. We also want to use lighting as our key elements to guide our guests of where they should look at or to follow. And we also have a design of the experience start with the morning and then end with the sunset. And here's some example of our scenes in different day of the time.
The camping car model is placed at the player's start point at the beginning of the game. This is also an example of the style we are aiming for across the whole game. The design uses stylized proportions to give it a playful and approachable feel, which the rich, warm color palette creates a welcoming atmosphere. The rendering style and the level of complexity here is the zero standard for the rest of the world. In addition, as shown to the right, we also introduced architectural elements inspired by Chinese culture, which further ground the fantasy world in a unique cultural context. Building on that foundation, we also designed dynamic moments to bring the environment to life. The butterfly flying animation will appear in the swaying grass scene on the left. This not only enhances the player's experience by creating little surprises across the hiking journey, but also creates a fantasy-like moment that reinforces the whimsical and stylized visual direction our game is aiming for. Alongside that, we added randomly shaped stones and a variety of trees to make the natural environment more richer and more authentic.
During the early stage of the project, we did a lot of tech research to find the foot tracking technology that best do this. There are a lot of ways to do this. We can do locomotion, walking sensor, mocap, LBE style, or just strap cross controllers to our feet. And these solutions, they are so different from each other, and they offer completely different player affordance. For example, being all locomotion style, Cat VR, this one, let players walk in place. Octoboosts have a special shoe framework that can make players feel they're walking forward, but actually they're not moving. And cyber shoes let players sit in a chair and roll their feet forward and backward. These solutions, it's extremely a big workload to explore so many of them, especially some of them are still at early stage and some of them support only Unity or only Unreal. There will always be problems you never know unless you actually try them out. But we don't have enough time and funds to try most of them, so we have to have a methodology to select tech, and this is our solution. First, we mock the affordance. We let playtesters try walk in place or sit there rolling their feet, and we ask them whether they feel immersed or feel weird, and we just dump the weird choices. Second, we try the tech we can get at hand. We tried locomotion, we tried the mocap, and we also put on the headset and went to the gym. After that, we reach out to the tech providers and see if we can get tech support from them. The more they're willing to help us, the more we will lean toward their product.
So, after trying out a lot of different tech in that way, we settled on Brilliant Soul, a company that we're working very closely with. So they offer these Bluetooth modules that you clip to your shoe. And you can see it tracks your position, acceleration, rotation, direction. And they also make insoles that track pressure, and these all include haptics as well. So they're a small company, and we're working directly with Zach, the CTO, and Jeff, the founder, and they're providing us a lot of support throughout this process. Of course, this is very new and emerging tech, which comes with some challenges in the development process. We got these in week 4, and we soon found out that they lacked plugin support for our Windows PCs, and they also required a lot of additional third-party software to fully work. Thankfully, Zach and Jeff have been very, very helpful, going back and forth in a lot of email exchanges and meetings. We were finally able to build the Unreal plugin last Wednesday.
And we have done several playtests from last week, and we got some valuable feedbacks from the playtesters. The good part is people love our visuals. All guys pause and focus exactly where we intend them to look at the dynamic moments. And the neutral side is several guys wants to interact with the water. And the downside here is not all of our guests follow the intended path we designed. Some were drawn to unexpected focal points. These observations really help us to refine and adjust our environment's design with visuals and guidance.
And for our next steps, so of course, our plan is to finish up our map, and along with the site, we will do a lot of different play tests to ensure that our guidance and our visual is guiding our guests the right way. And also along the same, along with the development of the map, the art team will further develop more and more art style, and also create tech art that makes the dynamic moments feels more interactive, and also adding more visuals. And as for the tech side,
So in addition to these modules, we hope to get the insoles, the pressure tracking insoles, within the next week. On top of that, Brilliant Soul also offers integrating machine learning into their devices, so we can train models on different foot gestures, gaits, to better recognize different types of movement, and that should make for smoother development and gameplay experience. And finally, we hope to work with Vivian to try out her omnidirectional treadmill and explore the possibilities that might be available there.
and also we did some small site experiments. We wanted to experiment with some LBE design, since we are using a unique control of a foot tracker. We want to think about how to make this experience more immersive and more different, to make our guests feel like they are walking on an on-play surface. We did discuss about having a box of rock or sands in our project room, but we also wanted to have this experience to be more accessible to people. And I don't think everyone have a sandy or rocky living rooms. So we look up some uncommon shoes, such like a mustard slipper and also rocky shoes, which inspire us to make prototypes. With our test one, we just simply stick a bunch of rocks on a shoe-shaped pad, but this leads to, because of the heaviness of the rock, the pads keep falling off from the shoe, and it doesn't really hold on to the feet. So on our test 2, we actually model a 3D print purpose rocky underpads, and so that if in future we want to mass produce it, we can just try it by just 3D print it. We also thought of adding spray, sand, or fan to make our journey more immersive, but again, this is a side project that we want to experiment after Halves. And that's all for our presentation. Now we are happy for Q&A.
Could you talk a little more about your sound design? I saw wind in the grass. Are you going to have sound to like reinforce environment, sound to reinforce steps, maybe sound to reinforce dead ends where the vegetation is too thick?
Yes, so I think our sound designer can talk more, but our intentionally used to have like very subtle like wind sound, leaf sound, but we want to design that at the starting point, which is like the camping site area, more like car engine sound, like people talking, so it's like more the sound of like the modern days that we hear around us. And as the experience walk into the woods, this will be cut down and filled with white noises like the river or like just like the wind and like leaf hustling. And we might add like subtle music, but we haven't really think of like how this will make our experience more immersive, or this will cut down like making this more like a game-like instead of like a real hiking experience.
Have you given any consideration to like the identity of the player character? I understand that it's meant to be an immersive experience, and that means that like ideally the player believes themselves to be the person in the environment, in the virtual environment, but that's not always necessarily true. In fact, like I can speak from my own experience in hiking. Like I can see my own arms, I can see my own legs. If they don't look like my arms and legs in your experience, is it me?
Yes, so we don't have any identity. In fact, because it's first person, the most is like we can see the hands, but we are designing that it's like holding a hiking stick, and we're thinking of like making them to wear gloves. So we don't really see the skin.
Yeah, somewhat related. I think this is a really hard project. You're taking something that its strengths are being outside and fresh air and natural beauty and getting away from screens, and you're putting someone in front of a screen essentially, right? So given that, I think you have showed a lot of good process in this presentation, but the thing that's foggy in my mind is what is the use case of this and what is like the target demographic? And I think you, to simplify the problem, have to have a very specific use case and specific person who would want to do this.
I think we don't really have like a very specific audience. The reason like for this project is that we want to try out how the foot tracker have developed and create an experience like designing with the foot tracker. And yeah, I think.
Yeah, I don't think we have like who's our like exactly the target audience one, but I think we are trying to explore like the foot tracking techniques with the VR. Hope they can combine together, maybe something.
And like kind of like proving the foot tracker is usable and is like fully developed. So I don't know, future BBW they can experience it. Yeah. But like the foot tracker is a new tech, and we are also having a lot of like problems with it and trying to work around it. So.
I thought I saw that you said 12 plus is your audience. Is that right?
Yes.
Personally, I like the meditative walk, hike through the woods, the environment. Do you think that feels right for a 12-year-old? And have you tested with that group?
We haven't really tested with like 13 or 14. But the reason why we have it at 12 is that, well, we need to do more research, but is that we want to have like audience that's starting to admire like meditative experience. And we feel like, we did think about like 12 below, but we feel like
it's too young.
Maybe too young for them to just like calm down and like enjoy the moment.
So I'm just gonna say that might be a little bit of a cop-out. Like this, you're gonna have users who are like, this is horribly boring. And that's the thing you have to have tough skin about. And like, okay, what does that mean? Like, if it's just a technology thing, like, people will be around you, oh, this is interesting technology, but it's not entertaining. And I'm not saying it has to be high octane, but if you don't address the entertainment aspect, if you don't address this is boring because, then it's just gonna be, you can't say, well, it's not for you, and just like, well, that's not the wrong audience. It's going to be boring unless you define what makes it really a form of entertainment, what brings value. This is what Mo's getting to. And so it's almost like I need you to get to a point where you hear that. And that's why I'm saying that, because no one's kind of the elephant in the room. Like, there are people probably here like, this is boring. Well, it's only boring because you haven't put a container around it and defined it. So you have to get there. If not, it's going to be either you love it and it's your right audience, and it's not. And the other thing I will add to this is weird that I'm looking at this project, because this morning I happened to be out at Falling Water for a meeting. And everything you just described, I experienced in real life. We drove up, there's gravel on the ground, you hear the sound of it, birds, nature. There was a sweet part where you got to stand and you see like the waterfall and you hit, and then you took another path to get to the destination. So like everything you're deciding, I'm sitting here and like, man, I just experienced that in real life. If you're gonna tell me now I'm gonna experience it virtually, you have to deliver on something, or I'm gonna say, this is boring. This is not delivering. So it cannot just be a tech experiment.
I think just one final point on this is it feels very disconnected to me, the meditation experience and the foot tracking, because to me, you could do all this without any foot tracking, and it doesn't feel like the foot tracking is necessarily adding on to this. If you're saying that your goal is purely meditation, and it's like beautiful, but there's also these confounding elements of like, you also added some cultural elements to it, and that seems to be underdeveloped to the point where I'm like, why is this like pagoda cultural, but like everything else is just like butterflies and fields? So I think choosing a focus would help here. And that focus, if you're going to talk about foot tracking, like that's an immersive focus. I think those like other side avenues you talked about of like adding wind or adding haptics using the feet and everything, that could be adding to the immersion, and then the focus comes like this immersion. But just like, I think connecting all of that, just what makes this meditative and why do you need the foot tracking in it is just sort of like the big question on my mind. So yeah.